Well, hello everyone, my name is Zwiggojr and welcome back to another ROM hack video. Today we'll be jumping into the story of Pokemon Dreary version. It is a pretty short ROM hack, but it had a pretty damn cool story, so I thought I'd feature it on the channel. Pokemon Dreary is all about Darkrai and him creating bad dreams for everyone, illusions and stuff like that. So if you're a fan of Darkrai, you're going to love this game. In this ROM hack, I'll only be playing with gift Pokemon as well, but I will be allowed to use items. And the reason why I will be allowed to use items is because there are points into the game where you cannot find any wild Pokemon anymore, so it's impossible to grind up, which means that you will get stuck. But as a challenging factor, I will not be allowed to evolve the Pokemon that I get. So for example, you can get Charmander, Bulbasaur, Pikachu, and I'm not allowed to evolve those Pokemon. But if I get a Pokemon from a gift that's already evolved, I can of course use that. With the rules out of the way, don't forget to click that subscribe button and let's get right into Pokemon Dreary version. We start off the game by naming ourselves Zwiggojr, and our rival in this one is gonna be Kaz. Because you know that kid from Jimmy Neutron called Carl Weezer?
Yes. Are you going to finish that croissant?
Well, here in Belgium, his first name is Kaz and not Carl, so that's kind of weird. The game then starts off by throwing you into Pallet Town, and there you see that there is a policeman blocking the road here. He asks you where you came from because there is apparently no one in Pallet Town left since they cleared it out with the police. He then accuses me that it isn't possible that we came from here because he swept the entire place, and then he gets a headache and all of a sudden vanishes. Since the Pikachu is now alone, we decide to pick it up and this will be our first gift Pokemon. We then cleared the entirety of the first route and we ran into a scientist. And he basically says the same thing as the policeman, where it isn't possible, I was in Pallet Town, blah blah blah. And at the end he asks, "Are you a monster?" and then challenges us to a Pokemon battle. We beat him up, we go to Viridian City, and we try to go up to Pewter City, but there are some guards there that are complaining about headaches, and that's a thing I've seen a lot in this ROM hack already, that everything and everyone seems to have a headache. We then go into a house, pick up a Pokeball, and there is a Bulbasaur in there, so this is our second gift Pokemon. We then go back to Route 1 and we see that Kaz is there, and we go ahead and talk to him, of course. He's talking about that we actually avoided the police force, but I have no idea what he's talking about. He says that we were all there, me, him, Professor Oak, Daisy, but I cannot remember anything of this. And then he says that I probably came down with some sort of amnesia, which is probably why we don't remember anything. He then says that it's all pretty damn weird what's going on right now. The police force invaded Pallet Town for no apparent reason. They forced everyone out of their homes and they had to go to Viridian City, but it didn't seem right because they were all very angry. So Kaz decided to jump ship and hide out here in Route 1 so that the police couldn't find him. He then gives us some potions and says that we might be in trouble if they find us. And then to prepare ourselves for the upcoming events, he's challenging me to a Pokemon battle. He has a level 7 Eevee against my level 11 Pikachu, and I get absolutely shredded for some reason. And that's another thing about this game. Every time you white out, you reset your game. So there's no grinding up on anybody. If you lose to them, you lose and you're out of the game. So then I had to go through the entirety of the game again, challenge him, and this time I could beat him up. He then says that he's going to camp out there for a while until things clear up, so we go to the Viridian City gym where we find Giovanni and the scientist once more. We start off by seeing some kind of flashback where we are challenging Giovanni, it seems like, and then they tell us that it's all very weird because they saw me going to the Indigo Plateau with all of the rest of the residents of Pallet Town, and now all of a sudden I'm here. Then we tell them about my amnesia. The scientist is trying to get everything out of my head, but Giovanni is like, maybe we should let it rest and focus on what's going on right now. Giovanni then tells us that he's going to protect the region with all of the other gym leaders and that amnesia is most of the time only temporarily, so in a few days we should be fine. Everyone is trying to bring every single resident to safety at the Indigo Plateau, so that's where they tell us to head next. We then ask what we're actually running from, so what the disaster is that happened, and Giovanni doesn't have an answer for this. He then runs off and the scientist says that there are people dying, there might be a virus, the rain keeps falling, we don't know what's happening, and we are going to the Indigo Plateau. At the Indigo Plateau, we find Kaz with us. He got captured by the police, and he asks us about our amnesia, and we tell him that we actually had some flashbacks. He then tells us to meet him at the Pokemon League and heads off. We then reach Victory Road, and Giovanni says that he's here to lead all of the residents through Victory Road because my Pokemon aren't strong enough to deal with the Pokemon in there, and we suddenly teleport away to Silph Co. We go around the building and pick up our third Pokemon in Charmander. We then go outside and we see that almost every single building is blocked off by police officers that are telling us to go to Viridian City. We then go to the Karate Dojo and we pick up 2 Pokemon in Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee there. And one of the only buildings that isn't blocked off by police officers is of course the 6th gym with Sabrina. So we go in, we confront her about the whole thing. She then tells us that she does not want to run to Viridian City because apparently running hasn't saved anyone from this virus or whatever it is. And at the end she gets mad and challenges us to a Pokemon battle. But we get absolutely destroyed by her second Pokemon, Espeon. It legit almost one-shots every single one of my team members except for Bulbasaur, which can get some decent damage off, but eventually he falls too, and the rest of my team is no match against it. We then went back, we got destroyed by Kadabra after that, which is our final Pokemon, so I knew in order to beat her, I had to grind up my Pokemon somewhere. So I went back to Silph Co, and that is apparently full of police officers who are ready to battle you if you need some extra experience. So after beating up all of the police force in this entire city, I went back to Sabrina. This time Charmander absolutely shredded her first Pokemon Venonat with 2 Embers. She then switched in Espeon, so I went into Bulbasaur, put it to sleep with Sleep Powder and put a Leech Seed on it, and then I switched into Hitmonchan to get rid of the accuracy drop from Sand Attack. Espeon woke up very quickly, so he shredded Hitmonchan and I switched back into Bulbasaur. I then put it back to sleep with Sleep Powder, we got hit with a Confusion, did a lot of damage, but eventually Leech Seed was able to give us a lot of HP back. But she healed up and in the end she woke up as well and killed me with another 2 Confusions. So Charmander came back out, I went for the Ember, which was enough to now finish off Espeon. Next up was Mr. Mime, which did go down after I spammed Thunder Shock with my Pikachu for about 7 turns. After we defeated it, we did get the move Double Team, which is going to be amazing if we want to cheese out some battles. Then Kadabra came out, I was able to hit 1 more quick attack and then my Pikachu went down and I switched into Charmander. And this was a really close battle, my Charmander was only left with 4 HP in the end, but by spamming Metal Claw, Kadabra eventually went down and we defeated Sabrina. After beating her, we get another flashback seeing that we apparently already beat her before, but she or I doesn't seem to remember this. She then states that none of this is actually real, because the rain doesn't make you wet. The rain doesn't leave puddles anywhere. So it must be some kind of illusion. After this encounter with Sabrina, we head to the top of Silph Co, where we see that there is a meeting with some very high people like Blaine and the scientist we met before. The scientist then says, "Hey, this is Zwiggo, I met him on Route 1, but how did you actually get here? How did you get past all of the guards in Kanto that we've placed around every corner without them noticing you?" And then I told them that I have no idea and I apparently just teleported here. This is another anomaly because first I get my amnesia, now I'm teleporting around. This seems very weird for the scientists and everyone in this room. And then he asks me if it is possible that I teleported into Pallet Town after the evacuation. And that is probably exactly what happened. Blaine then says it's ridiculous, teleporting doesn't even exist, but it kinda makes sense. Then an emergency alert goes off saying that there are a lot of policemen dead around the Silph Co area, and that a shadowy figure was apparently the cause of this. Blaine then says that he believes this teleportation theory, but he does want to test me and I have to go and see him at the bottom of Silph Co to challenge him to a Pokemon battle. For some reason I decide to lead with Charmander, which was just very dumb because fire versus fire ain't that great, so I immediately switch into Pikachu, get the Vulpix down into orange health while eventually going down to fire spins. I then switch in Charmander and scratch the Vulpix to death. He then switches in Charmeleon, so I go into Bulbasaur and go for the Sleep Powder Leech Seed combo. And then I just start tackling away until he wakes up, then I put him back to sleep. But eventually he uses a potion and I already got hit with a lot of smoke screens, so I switched into Charmander. I then kept on scratching away once more until it fainted. Last it was Magmar, who absolutely shredded Bulbasaur and Charmander, so I had to switch into my last hope, Hitmonlee. So I went for the Revenge, which did more than half of his health, and I finished it off with a double kick while only having 4 HP remaining as well as a burn. After we beat Blaine, there is another emergency alert which tells us that the shadowy figure is apparently gone. We then head out on the streets and we find a lot of dead bodies, which don't really look like dead bodies, but I mean, it's a Pokemon game. I then walk around the city and see that there's actually a house open right now, so I go in and I find a man standing there. And he's talking about the same things that Sabrina was, that this isn't real, and that this is actually the end of the world. And after he says that, we teleport to Cinnabar Island. At the lab, I picked up Omanite and Kabuto, as well as a letter which said that there was a package waiting at the Pokemart. The only thing I find there is a weird note written in a language that we don't understand, so we pick it up and go to the end of the mansion where we find May? May then tells us that she recognizes us and that we apparently traveled all over Hoenn with her. I then tell her that I can't remember any of this because of my amnesia, and then she says that I apparently battled through every single region already, Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn. I'm apparently the champion of those 3 regions. But I only have a Pikachu and all of those other weak Pokemon, so I don't know how this works. She then tells us how I always complained about people having a full party of Magikarps and that I didn't want to deal with that. And then she tells us that apparently she got teleported here by someone or something, but she doesn't remember. The last thing she remembers is falling asleep in Littleroot Town, and then we tell her our story. She then tells us that we have to investigate, maybe we have something to do with all of the tragedies happening, and we have to meet her at Viridian City. We then go outside and we see that we can't actually get to Viridian City because we don't have any surfing Pokemon. We then hear a Pokemon cry and we all of a sudden both get teleported to this exact spot. Then run up to a police officer and May's like, "Don't you remember your champion here?" And the police officer says that there is no champion in Kanto, only the Elite Four. And May's like, "Okay, we'll shook up your memory a little bit with a Pokemon battle." So right there and then we have to battle May. So she starts off with her Tailo, which we can easily get rid of with our Pikachu's Quick Tag and Thunder Shocks. Next up is Wailmer, so I stay in once more, go for the 2 Thunder Shocks, which does bring it down into red health. But eventually the Wailmer does take out my Pikachu with 2 water guns. And then switching Bulbasaur, but the Wailmer heals up with a super potion. I am able to hit a Vine Whip, but the next turn she switches into Combuskin. I then go for the Sleep Powder Leech Seed combo and eventually hit it with a lot of tackles until the Combuskin goes down. Then Wailmer comes out, I do the same strategy, but then Sleep Powder Leech Seed and then eventually kill it with Vine Whip, and last up is Shroomish. So I switch in Charmander, I go for the Ember a bunch of times until the Shroomish is burned up. After that, the policeman still doesn't remember anything, and he says that we're wasting his time and that it's very dangerous out here, so we have to head to the Indigo Plateau once more. Then we go through Victory Road, and at the end we meet up with May, and all of a sudden Brendan is here too. He apparently got teleported here too, just like us, but he also tells us the same story where he apparently went through Hoenn together with me, which is apparently not true because I already did it with May. And then we're all standing there and someone says something about other universes, which can definitely be true, where we all got pulled out of our own universes and put in this one. At the end, Brendan does want to battle us to see if we can remember anything by battling him, but we get destroyed by his last Pokemon, which is a Wingull. Yes, I legit, 4 of the 6 Pokemon on my team got destroyed by a freaking Wingull. Eventually I did lose to Brendan and I went back to my last save point, which was at the mansion in Cinnabar Island. That's so long ago, I have to go through the entire Victory Road once more and reach Brendan again. After then reaching them once more, I was able to wreck his first Pokemon Tropius with my Charmander's Ember without even getting hit once. Next up is Slugma, so I go into Ammonite and kill that thing with a bunch of water guns. Next up is Grovyle, so I switch in Charmander again, kill that thing with 2 embers. Then the freaking Wingull came out once more, but this time I did have Pikachu left, and 1 Thundershock is enough to win the battle against Brendan. After the battle, all 3 of us get teleported to this random island, and now we can see who has actually been teleporting us around. It's Dialga and Palkia. They then tell us that they are the rulers of time and space. We then ask them what they're doing here, and they tell us that we have been chosen by them because we are basically the best trainers around. We have all been warped from our own dimensions to this place, and the reason why we're here is because this dimension is basically under attack by something, and if we don't save it, Kanto will be gone forever. We also now know why everyone's dying, why everyone has headaches. It's because of this new threat. They then tell us that they themselves can't do anything about this because they have no idea who's behind all of it. And then they go back to our past where we apparently raised victory flags together, did all of this cool stuff, we conquered every region, but apparently we did this alone. And then they fuse us with May and Brendan into one person, and they tell us that it was me. All the time. We conquered all of those regions, Kanto, Hoenn, Johto, every single one of them, and because we are so good at raising Pokemon, they chose me to clear this threat. They then tell us that we have to go to the Indigo Plateau, and they teleport me back. At the Indigo Plateau, we meet up with Lance, and he tells us that at the Hall of Fame, there is a secret door that leads to Johto and away from all of the shenanigans. But all of a sudden, the power goes out and there is a mist going through the entirety of the Indigo Plateau. And then we get teleported to Route 10 at the power plant. We already see a very weird figure standing in front of it, looking kind of like a Team Rocket member. As we go in and reach the end, we meet up with Evan, the scientist, once more. He immediately challenges us to a battle because he wants to stop us here and now. I don't know what he's saying, but after the battle, he's like, "You're strong enough, I know you can stop him," and he then runs off. So after that, we find Darkrai, and we see some kind of cutscene where he is abducting all of the people that go to the Indigo Plateau. After we see this cutscene and we go back to the power plant, Darkrai is already gone. So we go outside and we see all of the grunts, Darkrai and Evan and Nurse Joy for some reason standing there. And Evan calls Darkrai and his entire cult out by saying they're not that strong and every trainer could just beat them up. And while in mid-sentence, Darkrai kills him. He then also kills Nurse Joy, and he then walks up to me while the grunt says that now is our chance, but then Palkia teleports in. And Palkia asks what Darkrai is doing here with these idiots, referring to the group. And he then says that he finally found the source of all of the evil. It's Darkrai. Palkia then asks what Darkrai's goal is with all of this. And he then teleports us to some kind of weird island. At the middle of the island there is a big tower. So of course the only thing we can do is go in and try to reach the top. But as we walk through, we set up an alarm and a team threat member comes down and starts talking to us. He tells us that he is an admin for Darkrai and that he cannot allow us to go further, and that his real name is Nietzsche, which sounds kind of German. After telling us his name, he challenges us to a battle. This is an area that I was talking about in the beginning where you cannot grind up anymore, and the Pokemon that are before you are pretty damn strong, so I got stuck on him for a little while. Because he has Pokemon like Exeggutor and Ninetales, my team isn't really built to take him down very easily. In the end though, I was able to win. So he starts off with the Dratini while I start off with Hitmonlee. I start off by hitting it with a lot of fighting type moves until he eventually switches into Exeggutor, which can take those way better. I then decide to sacrifice Kabuto, switch into Charmander and take out the Exeggutor with 2 Flame Bursts. Dratini comes out once more, so I go into Hitmonlee and finish that thing off with a double kick. Next up is Ninetales, so I go for one more double kick and get taken out by it. Then I switch into Pikachu, and I'm able to hit a Thunder Shock and a Quick Attack before it takes me out. And then switching Omanyte, I'm able to get it down into red health with water guns. He then uses a full restore. I hit a few more water guns before the Ninetales eventually kills my Omanyte. Then I switch in Charmander, and because this Ninetales has flash fire, I can only go for Metal Claws, which don't do that much damage. Eventually though, I get it down into red health, but it also gets me down into red health. So here is where I have to use my first item in a super potion and heal up my Charmander. I then hit one more Metal Claw to take out the Ninetales, and finally Haunter comes out. I'm able to get him down into red health until he eventually takes me down, so I switch into Bulbasaur and I decide to revive my Charmander. After reviving him, I hit a Flame Burst with him, and Haunter is now down, defeating Nietzsche that way. After I defeat him, he tells us a story about that he is in the same position as we are. When he first met Darkrai, he didn't want to join his cult, but what choice did he really have? Otherwise he would just get killed. He then tells us that there are more checkpoints like these throughout the entire tower, and that we probably won't get very far. He also tells us that Darkrai is at the top floor, and he then runs off. At the next checkpoint, we meet up with Zergle, the head scientist of this entire company, or cult. He tells us that we can't be snooping around here and that he has a mechanical Abra standing behind us, which then teleports us away to the lab. We then get caught by the police, who are now on Zergle's side for some reason, but one of the mechanical Abras comes along and saves us. We get teleported back by the front of the tower and we head on up, where we reach the elevator, which will take us to the top floor, but before we can actually take it, we have to fight Nietzsche once more with now his full team. He tells us that he saw a lot of people coming down and that none of them apparently were able to beat me, except for Zergle, who had a weird smug on his face. He then tells us that at the top floor there are a lot of rare candies and that he grabbed some of them to level his team up in order to beat me, and then the battle starts. He now does start off with Ninetales, which is level 24, but after getting it down into red health, he healed up and switched into Exeggutor, which can counter Hitmonlee very easily. So I of course switched into Kabuto to sacrifice him, then into Omanyte to try and get an Ice Beam off, which was just stupid. I have no idea why I did that. And then I switched in Charmander, who was able to hit 2 Flame Bursts and take out the Exeggutor. Next up is Dragonair, and I did pick up the TM for Dragon Claw, learned that to my Charmander, and took down the Dragonair with 2 of those. Ninetales came out once more, so I switched in Hitmonlee and I spammed Revenge until it eventually went down, while hitting ourselves once in our confusion. Next up was Gengar, so I switched in Bulbasaur and I tried to go for the Sleep Powder, but the Ninetales did set up a safeguard, so it didn't work. Bulbasaur eventually goes down, so I switch in Hitmonlee in order to heal up Charmander with a super potion. He then goes down and I switch in my Charmander. I'm able to hit 1 Fire Fang, but then I hit myself in my confusion a bunch of times. So I healed up with a super potion, but that wasn't enough because I hit myself once more and the Gengar took me out. So I switch in Pikachu and I revive Charmander once more with my Sacred Ash. I do get confused, but I don't hit myself anymore and 2 Flame Bursts are enough to take out Gengar. After the battle, he tells us that he doesn't really want to fight us because he thinks that what his group is trying to achieve is right, but the way that they're trying to achieve it is just questionable. He then says that he wants justice as much as I do, but justice is different for different people. He then tells us that if we go to the top floor, we have to be ready to face Darkrai and Zergle because they will be my final 2 confrontations. But then something happens to the elevator, it gets stuck and we can't use it anymore. So we have to go back down the steps in order to fix it. So we have to give in some random numbers, we do that, and the elevator is fixed. Make it back to the elevator, go up, and we meet up with Zergle. He then explains how we got out of the lab, and it's because one of the mechanical Abras actually just thinks like a normal Abra, and that's why it had the rationality to save me. He then says that even Palkia couldn't beat him and that they apparently captured Palkia, so we are not gonna stand a chance is what he's saying. He's then talking about brainwashing in the laboratory and all of these kinds of stuff where he doesn't really explain anything, and he then challenges us to a battle. He starts off with an Electabuzz, but my Hitmonlee is just way too strong, killing it with a Revenge and a double kick combo. Alakazam is up next and he starts off by using an X special, which is very scary, but I hit a Flame Burst. He then disables my Flame Burst, so I go for Fire Fang, get the critical hit, and take out Alakazam. Next up is Magneton, so I decide to go into Bulbasaur and put it to sleep. We then switch into Charmander, I go for the Flame Burst, but he wakes up, He then heals up. I switch into Bulbasaur once more to try and put it back to sleep, but he hits me with another mirror shot, taking out Bulbasaur. So I go back into Charmander. We get hit with 2 Sparks, but that isn't enough to take out my Charmander, but my Charmander does have 2 Flame Bursts in order to take down Magneton and win the battle against Zergle. We then get thrown into a hole with Nietzsche, and he says that this is crazy. They managed to detain Palkia, and then he tells us a secret. Apparently Darkrai isn't at the top of the cult, so he isn't even the leader. The people in the cult call them the founders, but their real names are Dreary and Aphrodite. He then tells us that even if we defeat Darkrai, we still have to defeat those 2. After that, I picked up these 7 rare candies that resided at the top of the tower, and I gave them all to my Charmander, which is now level 42. We then go to Darkrai and confront him, and he tells us that he's the one behind everything. The debts, the rainfall, the headaches, everything. He tells us that it's all for the greater good and that we don't even know what we got ourselves into. He brought us here to the unknown tower so that we wouldn't meddle with all of his plans anymore. Well, that failed big time. And then he attacks me, and instead of just killing me, he challenges me to a Pokemon battle. He starts off with Nidoqueen, so I immediately have to switch out Hitmonlee into Omanyte to sacrifice it, and then I go into Charmander to take down Nidoqueen with 2 flamethrowers. Vaporeon is next. I can hit a Thunder Shock with Pikachu, but a takedown is enough to finish me off. Then I go into Bulbasaur, go for the Sleep Powder Leech Seed combo again, until I get it down into red health, and he then uses a full restore. So I put it to sleep once more and start Vine Whipping once again. Then he wakes up, hits me with an Aurora Beam, and Bulbasaur is down and out. So then I go into Charmander and finish off Vaporeon with a Dragon Claw. Next up is Wigglytuff, so I stay in and go for the Flamethrower and finish him off with 2 Metal Claws. I have no idea why, I just didn't go for 2 Flamethrowers, but Wigglytuff was down very easily. Next up is Mr. Mime, which is also Fairy type, so I go for the Metal Claw once more, getting down into red health, but he confuses me and heals up. I then hit myself way too many times and Charmander goes down. So I revive him and I heal him all the way up by sacrificing Hitmonlee and Kabuto. He's able to hit 1 more Psybeam and a Metal Claw finishes it off, and his final Pokemon is Venusaur, which Charmander takes down with 2 flamethrowers. After he lost, he's like, how can I lose? I know that Aphrodite is a murderer, but even I know that the word of the founders is will, so I will now show you what my real power it feels like. And this is a gauntlet battle, so I have to fight him again, and now he has a Mew and I only have a Charmander left. I start off by reviving Kabuto, then sacrificing it to revive Charmander and healing myself up with a super potion. He puts me to sleep, but eventually I snap out of it and I kill the Mew with 3 flamethrowers. After beating him for the 2nd time, he apologizes for being so mad and tells us about how he used to live on New Moon Island back in Sinnoh, but that there was nothing to do there. Because there was nothing on that island, he started to wander around in Sinnoh and listening to people's thoughts, because that's what Darkrai does. He can go into people's minds. And the more he listened to people, the more that unfairness started to come out as the most common thing that he heard. A lot of people struggled to fit in with society. They had a lot of ambition, but they lacked the trust and respect from other society members. He then realized that he wanted a home that was full of kindness and happiness and love. He wanted a place where everyone could be equal and capitalize on all of their talents and ambitions. His strategy then was to find an island that humanity didn't know about so that he could unfold his plan there. That's why this island is called Unknown Island. Then one day he went out searching for something. He found a man on a boat starving, looking like he was going to die. He then looked around and saw a rocky island, so what he did he put the man to sleep and he steered him into the right direction and then read his mind. The man had run away from his home island and family in order to find a place where he was appreciated, and his name was Dreary. Together they started building on this new island, and it was at that time that Darkrai also found his 2nd apprentice, Aphrodite. He kept building and looking for people that were underappreciated and wanted to join their cause, and so Unknown Island came to existence. But something changed. Dreary and Aphrodite turned their back on the plan. They started to develop gadgets that would do all of the work for them. He trusted them at the start, but now things are very different. Instead of looking for normal islands, they started to take over Kanto by brute force. Darkrai tried to stop them, but they were way too powerful. They built machines to extract Darkrai's power and attack Kanto with it. They had similar goals, but in the end, they wanted to achieve it in a different way. He then says, "It's like I'm a slave to the founders, or at least one of the founders, Dreary." And then he gets teleported away and we fall into a hole. We then see these random persons standing there talking about a song that he's hearing and asking to the grave if Aphrodite can hear this song through the grave. He thanks Aphrodite, but he says that he now has Darkrai and Zergle and needs to. Then he says, "And soon we won't even have to deal with Zwiggojr." He says that we will soon be gone just like Aphrodite and that we are very similar to her. We apparently both tried to take advantage of him, and says that we can't have any slip-ups in this operation and that we should take a look at the grave. So that's what we do, and engraved into it, it says "my assistant, my partner, my traitor." And then Dreary kills us. And then he says, "This is how we deal with distractions. There's a brand new world waiting out there, just for me." And that was it. Kind of a weird ending. So I'm guessing that Aphrodite betrayed him and he killed her in order to go further with his plans. We have no idea what happens with Dreary after this. Maybe they're working on a sequel to this. But I think this was a pretty damn interesting ROM hack. If you want to download it yourself, the link will be in the description. But what did you think of the story? Let me know down in the comments below. If there are any more ROM hacks you would like to see me play, leave your suggestions down in the comments as well. And with that out of the way, I just want to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. You can do that as well if you really want to. The links are in the description. You get a lot of benefits like a special Discord chat, a Minecraft server, some very cool emotes, and a lot of other stuff. And as always people, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm zwiggojr, and I'll see you guys next time.